Part 14. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 131. In the Xi'an palace, the Empress Dowager, who was dressed elegantly, had a gloomy face. She clenched the teacup fiercely with her fingers, wearing exquisite long armor, and her tone was as cold as frost. Does the regent want to rebel? The eunuch who went to convey Yi's decree bowed and stood aside, his head lowered, and he did not dare to answer. Mother, calm down. Rong Chuiyun sat aside to drink tea. During the time he came to sit down in Xi'an Palace, his mood had calmed down a lot. Although there was still a little gloom in his eyebrows, he was able to control it. His own emotions, the regent holds the power of 400,000 soldiers and horses, and the Suanjia army under his command is the best among the best. I, the emperor, do not dare to challenge him for the time being. The queen mother said coldly, how dare he be so disrespectful to the king when he has the military power? Does he know what it means to be inferior to the king and his ministers? This little uncle has always been cold and surly. How has he ever thought of being loyal to the emperor? Rong Chuiyun said with a calm expression. When my father was in power, he was cold and unkind. Now everyone in the court is afraid of him. No one can do it. Of course, if you restrain him at all, you won't have any scruples. The queen mother's eyebrows were grim, thinking that Rong Yu had been aloof, cold, and arrogant when she was a teenager. She had always turned a blind eye to her, the emperor's sister-in-law, and was indifferent to the late emperor. However, she was still young at that time, so she could still explain it as a rebellious and ignorant boy. Now that he is already in his 20s and has led the army for several years, his temper should have calmed down long ago. Is it possible that he can still defend himself by saying that he is young? The queen mother thought of the military power in Rong Yu's hands, and her eyebrows became colder. He only relies on the military power in his hands. Can't the emperor find a way to make him hand over the military power? Hand over military power? Rong Chuiyun's eyes were dark. Why didn't he want to take back the military power in Rong Yu's hands? I think about it day and night, while eating and sleeping. As long as the military power is in Rong Yu's hands, he will not be able to sleep peacefully. But how easy is it to take back the military power? My son has just ascended the throne, and the words of the regent in the court now carry more weight than the emperor. Rong Chuiyun frowned gloomily. My son has not yet thought of any way to regain his military power. There is no way, the queen mother said in a cold voice. Are you in charge of this country, or is he in charge? When Rong Chuiyun heard the words, the corners of his lips tightened, his brows and eyes seemed to be shrouded in a dark cloud, and his eyes were filled with coldness, but he did not say a word. Sometimes he also wonders, who is the master of this country? The regent Rong Yu only holds the military power, and he also clings to the power of the regent. Does he want to evade the power of the emperor? No, he would never allow it. We can only start with Nan 11, the queen mother said coldly. If he is sincere to Nan 11, then this Nan family's legitimate daughter is his only weakness and the only person who can contain him. She must make good use of it. Rong Chuiyun said, during this period, the Nan family girl has been staying in the regent's mansion. She is closely protected by the regent. She is closely followed by experts when she goes in and out. It is difficult to succeed. Hard to get? The queen mother's brows were deep. The more closely he protects her, the more it proves the importance of Nan's girl in his heart. Hard doesn't mean it can't be done. She entered the palace at the age of 16 and served the late emperor for more than 30 years. There were so many beautiful women coming and going in the harem. How many of them were buried in the palace without anyone knowing? How many people can die a good death in the end? She was the only one who not only survived until the death of the late emperor, but also until her son ascended the throne. What method was she not proficient in? She didn't believe that she couldn't deal with a mere Nan 11. Thinking like this, a cold look flashed in the queen mother's eyes, and her tone was also cold, apart from the regent, who does Nan 11 get along with better on weekdays. Rong Chewyun raised his head and glanced at the Queen Mother, then closed his eyes and thought deeply. As an emperor, he has many things to do, and all he thinks about are political affairs and power. How can he have time to pay attention to the friendship of a little girl? Turning to look at the palace attendant standing beside him, he said, "Who knows? Report to the emperor." To the Queen Mother. Manager Zhang beside the Queen Mother said respectfully, "Miss Nan used to like Gu Qingshu, the #1 scholar appointed by the emperor last year, but now the two of them seem to have turned against each other. Besides, Princess Bailing of the eldest princess's family seems to get along well with this Nan girl." The emperor was stunned for a moment. Jia. Yes. The Queen Mother frowned. How come Jia and Nan 11 get along? It's a coincidence, Manager Zhang said with a smile. For the little princess's birthday, she sent a post to the Prince Regent's palace, inviting Miss Nan to attend the birthday banquet. After Miss Nan came, she sent it directly to the little princess. A bracelet worth 10,000 taels outweighs all the gifts from the other ladies present. The little princess is upright and doesn't think much about it. When she saw Miss Nan's generous gesture, she was so happy. Manager Zhang didn't say anything further, but the Queen Mother and the Emperor already understood what he meant. Those who serve around the Queen Mother naturally know how to speak. The implicit meaning behind Manager Zhang's words was that Miss Nan deliberately bought a valuable bracelet and gave it to Princess Bailing in order to please the princess and establish a relationship with the eldest princess's palace. It's not that the little princess is greedy for money and has a good relationship with Miss Nan. But this is not important. The important thing is that Lin Jia does have a good relationship with Nan 11. Manager Zhang paused slightly, then continued, "I heard that the princess even took the initiative to invite Miss Nan to the Kingian Tower to watch a play a few days ago." The Queen Mother frowned. Lin Jia and Nan 11 had a good relationship. Gu Qingshu and Miss Nan turned against each other. She frowned slightly. Why did they suddenly turn against each other? "I don't know much about this either," Zhang said. "It was rumored for a while that Miss Nanyu had a good relationship with Gu Zhuangyuan. When she went to visit her sister at the regent's mansion, she stabbed Miss Nanyu with a dagger for some reason. After that, Miss Nanyu probably blamed Gu Zhuangyuan for this incident. Okay, I don't want to hear this." Rong Chewyun interrupted him impatiently. "It's been so long, what else is there to mention?" "Your Majesty is wrong," the Queen Mother said in a low voice. "I think it's worth mentioning." Rong Chewyun was surprised. "Mother, Jia is your sister's daughter. Unless it's absolutely necessary, we can't start with her for the time being," the Queen Mother said in a light tone, "but Gu Qingshu can be used." Rong Chewyun seemed to be thinking about something. "I heard that Miss Nan's sister Nanyu was pregnant with Gu Qingshu's child, but the child was kicked away by the regent, and Miss Nanyu was sent to a brothel because she offended Miss Nan." Zhang Zongguan added the news at the right time, with a deep and playful tone. Gu Zhuangyuan and Miss Nanda not only turned against each other, but the hatred is getting deeper and deeper. Author has something to say. The scum must be dealt with one by one, and the speed of solving them is neat, and the Gordian knot is cut. Well, I heard that the babies think I update slowly. If there is enough time today, I will update 2,000 more. Good night, babies. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 132. Neither the Queen Mother nor the Emperor spoke for a moment. But Gu Zhuangyuan was injured before. He stayed in the mansion to recuperate and did not go out. I heard that the injury was also caused by someone sent by the regent. After Manager Zhang finished speaking, he added cautiously, "But this is just a guess. Is it true? No one can be sure what the people from the regent's palace did. It doesn't matter whether the regent sent someone to do it or not," the Queen Mother said calmly. "How is Gu Qingshu's injury? It should be nothing serious. Send an imperial doctor to have a look," the Queen Mother ordered, with a cold and deep tone. "The girl he likes is getting married. How can he not let him know? If he doesn't know about it in time, wouldn't it be a pity? Lifelong. Yes. Gu Qingshu is mine, Rong Chuiun said calmly. Although he is the #1 scholar, he is still young and has no family background to support him. If he offends the regent this time, I am afraid that even I will not be able to protect him. The Queen Mother lowered her eyes silently, gently scraping the foam on the tea surface with the tea lid, and said in an indifferent tone, a king should know how to choose. It's just a small #1 scholar, can the emperor be reluctant to part with it? It's not that I can't bear to leave, it's just. There are many scholars in the world, and he is not the only one who can pass the exam, the Queen Mother said, with a ruthless tone in her tone. If you can't get rid of the regent, even if the emperor can get 100 Gu Qingshu, it won't matter. Useless. Rong Chuiun fell silent after hearing this and said nothing. If Gu Qingshu could really do something for him, he would just give it up. He was afraid that he would not be able to accomplish anything on his own, but would lose his life in vain. In the end, Rong Yu's suggestion of fixing it in 3 days was not adopted because the matchmaker thought that April 18th was an auspicious day and April 9th was not so auspicious, so she finally decided to set the date on April 18th. Although Rong Yu is decisive in killing and sticks to his word, he still has to respect the matchmaker's opinion when it comes to marriage matters. There are still 12 days until April 18th, 9 days later than the 3 days requested by Rong Yu. Rong Yu obviously had no intention of staying idle in the palace for 12 days. When the Queen Mother and the Emperor were sitting together in the palace, trying to plot against them, the carriage from the Prince Regent's palace had already left the city overnight. Nan 11 sat in the carriage and looked at the man opposite. Rong Yu, where are we going? Rong Yu was silent for a moment. Kangyun Mountain. Kangyun Mountain? Nan 11 was puzzled. Why go to Kangyun Mountain? Rong Yu reached out and touched her head. You'll know when we get there. Nan 11 raised her eyebrows. You're not trying to trick me into going to Kangyun Mountain and sell me to the bandit leader to be the village's wife, are you? Rong Yu raised the corners of his mouth in a subtle way, and a smile flashed in his eyes. Well, I am the bandit leader, you want to be my wife. Nan 11 thought he was joking and nodded seriously. Being a wife of Yazai is actually quite good. You are free and unsupervised. You can also enjoy the beautiful scenery every day. You can be as carefree as you want. Comfortable. This sentence is obviously a joke. Nan 11 had never been to Kangyun Mountain. As a boudoir, she only lived to the age of 17 in her previous life. She had never even gone out of the gate of the imperial city of Greatzhou, so of course she had no chance to see the vastness and steepness of Kangyun Mountain. But even if she didn't have the chance to see it with her own eyes, she knew that Kangyun Mountain was within the territory of Dezhou. Oh no, it should be said to be the most mysterious mountain range on the Kyushu continent. However, based on Nan 11's knowledge, she only knows that it is mysterious. As for how mysterious it is, she has no idea. The carriage traveled for half the night, and in the early morning it had already left the prosperous imperial city hundreds of miles behind. Someone prepared a fast horse in front of it. Rong Yu and Nan 11 got out of the car and had something to eat. After taking a short rest, they hugged Nan 11 and flew on horseback. Are you tired? Rong Yu lowered his head and asked her. His clean and hot breath blew into her ears, making Nan 11's heart beat faster. She tilted her head slightly, looked up at his noble and handsome face, and said in a soft voice, how can you be tired when you have a beautiful husband as your companion? I'm a little pressed for time. Thank you for your hard work. Rong Yu kissed the side of her face and said, when we get to Kangyun Mountain, take a good bath and rest for 2 days. Nan 11 was holding back her curiosity, but it looked like she was in a hurry, so she didn't ask any more questions and just hummed softly. The fast horse galloped for a long time, and then changed to a carriage. Rong Yu was probably the most considerate man Nan 11 had ever seen in her life. He was afraid that she would have a hard time riding on the horse, so after galloping for about 400 miles in a row, Nan 11 changed into a bedding at noon. A very large carriage with soft fur, the kind that she can sleep on without any bumps. Rongyu was afraid that her butt would hurt from riding a horse, so he massaged her buttocks and waist himself. Nan 11 was so comfortable that she couldn't help but blush and her heart beat. Fortunately, Rongyu's technique was excellent, and the warm qi soothed her whole body. Due to fatigue, Nan 11 fell asleep quickly. After that, they drove for who knows how long. When she woke up, the two of them had arrived at the foot of Canyon Mountain. Canyon Mountain is the most mysterious mountain range in Jiuzhou continent. Its mystery is not actually the mountain itself, but the power hidden on this mountain, Juxiao Pavilion. Canyon Mountain is just a place of power of Juxiao Pavilion. Compared with the mystery of Canyon Mountain, the name Juxiao Pavilion is even more respected and feared in Jiuzhou continent. It is a transcendent force that dominates the 9 countries in the world. No one in the world knows the terror of Juxiao Pavilion and its extremely high status in the 9 provinces continent. It does not belong to the Jianghu, nor to the court, but is a huge force independent of the world. It does not care about worldly affairs, but has the most perfect and extensive power structure in the world. Medicine, poison, martial arts, military tactics, intelligence, Kimandungia, all of which are proficient, and even have some unknown secrets. The world admires, fears, and worships it, and no one dares to be disrespectful, just because, in the minds of the world, Canyon Mountain has always been a sacred place. Just as its name is domineering, noble like the 9 heavens outside the clouds, overlooking the world. Even the emperors of the 9 countries must be shocked when they mention the Juxiao Pavilion of Canyon Mountain. Standing at the foot of the mountain, Nan 11 looked at the endless mountains in front of her, as if she saw a scene of clouds and mist in the mountains, like a fairyland. From today, I really become the wife of the leader. Yes, Rongyu nodded, took her hand and walked up the mountain. We will stay here for 2 days. Stay for 2 days? Nan 11 blinked in confusion. Is the prince really the bandit leader? What bandit leader? Qingyang and the many black-clad guards behind him stopped their horses at the foot of the mountain, dismounted, and flew over using Qinggong. When they heard Nan 11's words, they couldn't help but refute. Canyon Mountain Juxiao Pavilion, the Juxiao treasure land that everyone reveres, how can it be related to a bandit leader? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 133. Rongyu glanced coldly, Tongue. Qin Jiang's neck shrank, and he immediately did not dare to say anything more. He even took the initiative to stay 2 steps behind, not to disturb his master's chat with Miss Nan 11. He has figured it out now. Everything Miss Nan 11 says is right. Even if she says that the mountain is a bandit mountain, the nest is a bandit den, and his prince is the bandit leader, he will definitely touch her lovingly. Head, well, you're right. If the prince is a king, he must be the kind of foolish king recorded in the history books, the kind who would not even give up his country for the sake of beauty. You deserve it. Yunya came closer and said with a cold snort, I don't know that the most important thing in your heart is the girl. Qingyang glanced at her sideways. Of course I know, but he didn't expect that his master would favor Miss Nan to such an extent. Canyon Mountain is tens of thousands of feet high, with majestic and undulating mountains, overlapping mountains, canyons and dangerous peaks, which are steep and difficult to navigate. Regardless of the imperial courts or people in the world, their impression of Juxiao Pavilion is that it is mysterious and unattainable. In the eyes of the world, the master of Juxiao Pavilion is a mysterious figure who rarely appears in the world. He almost never shows up in the world and has become a hermit who lives in seclusion. Canyon Mountain is surrounded by formations, and outsiders can easily get lost in the treacherous formations if no one is there to guide them. Rongyu, Juxiao Pavilion is located on the top of such a high mountain. It's not easy to go up and down the mountain. Nan 11 looked at the high mountain top and frowned. Are the people living on the mountain self-sufficient? When Qingyang heard this, he couldn't help but added, the men in Juxiao Pavilion are all masters. They can come and go with ease, and the steep mountains are as if they are walking on flat ground. Nan 11 was silent. Well, she was ignorant. It turns out that the legendary Qinggong that can reach heaven and earth actually exists. Rongyu said nothing and kept holding her hand tightly. Passing through a secluded path, you can see sparse grass and trees in front of you. There are towering trees on both sides. The dense trunks and leaves block the sun. Fragments of light spilled from the gaps between the leaves, forming a mottled scene in front of the eyes. The mountains are empty and quiet, with only the rustling leaves echoing in the ears, bringing a sense of tranquility that reaches deep into the soul. Just as Nan 11 was about to say something, she felt Rongyu suddenly grab her slender waist, and she was lifted up into his arms. With the sound of whistling in her ears, the mountain scenery flashed rapidly in front of her eyes. Pass. Rugged rocks and cliffs, trees growing in the mountains, low bushes, the scenery flashed from the side like a fleeting glimpse, the black hair was blown by the wind, the mountain breeze was mixed with the refreshing and fragrant smell of herbs, and the fragrance was it also carries a trace of bitterness. This road is very long and has many twists and turns. People who are not familiar with the road can easily get lost here. He didn't know how long he had been flying with Qinggong. It wasn't until a long stone staircase appeared in front of him that Rongyu slowed down and slowly put Nan 11 down. Standing with her feet on the ground, Nan 11 looked up at the bluestone steps leading to the top of the mountain. The surrounding scenery was picturesque. Although it was not as beautiful as the beautiful homes in the wealthy homes, she still had a sense of pride that stood alone in the world. Their own steepness and stability. But that's not the point. The point is, countless masters in green clothes suddenly appeared on both sides of the stone steps, and these people all knelt on both sides of the stone steps, like a formation greeting an emperor, leaving Nan 11 silent for a while. At this point, if Nan 11 still couldn't guess Rongyu's identity, it would obviously be too slow to be justified. Rongyu Nan 11 turned to look at the man beside her, with a subtle tone in her voice, the master of Juxiao Pavilion, is that you? Rongyu didn't say anything, just held her hand tightly and walked up the stone steps. The scenery is better at high places and the air is fresher. Nan 11 took a deep breath of fresh air and felt smooth all over. Rongyu. You are so unfathomable. Rongyu looked down at her and raised the corners of his lips slightly. We can get to know each other slowly in the future. Nan 11 was silent. She did not know much about him in her previous life. She did not expect that Rongyu would have other powerful identities besides his noble status as regent. But how did he do it? The mountains are very quiet. Rongyu didn't speak. The Xingyi masters kneeling on both sides were as motionless as stone sculptures. Their strong bodies were half kneeling on the ground, silently, like shadows. The sky is very blue and the clouds are very white. The two of them just held hands and climbed up the stairs step by step. Qingyang, who was following behind, raised his eyes to look at the sky and whispered to Yao, biting his ears, this feeling at this time is not like riding a horse on the endless prairie but not being able to gallop wantonly, but having to lead the horse slowly. Walk slowly. Silver Moon glanced at him, who is Ma? Qingyang choked. You mean, the girl is a horse? Yunyu secretly glanced at the clasped hands of the two people in front of her, quickly retracted her gaze, and looked at Qingyang with a warning, if you want to die young, you can just say so, no need. Report it to the prince and I can help you. Qingyang sneered, are you my opponent? Looking down on people, Yunyu pointed to the mountain master, I have practiced here for 10 years, What about you? Qingyang choked, I practiced it too. Several years. People with extraordinary talents don't need to judge their cultivation level by time. Extraordinary talent, Yunyu tilted her head and glanced at him up and down, with obvious contempt in her eyes. Only those like the prince are considered to be extremely talented. You can only be said to have good qualifications at best. Well, compared with his master? Qingyang was speechless for a moment, turned his head, looked at the tall and straight man in front of him, and whispered, in fact, I have a question in my heart that has been suppressed for more than 10 years, I still can't figure it out. Why is the master so powerful? Yin Yu thought for a while, maybe this is the difference between the master and the guard. Qin Jiang's mouth twitched, the emperor in the palace is still the master of the world, why haven't I seen him so powerful? The two whispered behind them, and Nan 11 didn't hear it very clearly, but it didn't affect her mood. Wrong you, she suddenly thought, you said such a high mountain is always surrounded by clouds and mist. Thousands or tens of thousands of years ago, could there be immortals practicing here? Wrong you hadn't spoken yet. Qingyang behind him heard this question and immediately said, girl, have you read too many myths? Yin Yu slapped him on the shoulder, why are you talking so much? Yin Yu Wrong Yu's voice was light, find a cliff and throw him down. Yin Yu responded crisply, yes. Qingyang's face changed slightly, and he didn't dare to speak anymore. Brother Qingyang, Yin Yu looked at him with ill intentions, and said with a smile, do you want to see which cliff has better scenery and is suitable for burial? Nan 11 was amused by the two, Qingyang is actually very cute. Author has something to say. I updated one more chapter today, I am so tired. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 134. Seeing her happy smile, Rong Yu said nothing. Well, cute is cute. Although he didn't see Qin Jiang's cuteness at all. The closer to the top of the mountain, the clearer the floating clouds in the sky can be seen. They look like various small animals, so real that you can pick them with your hands. The clouds and mists shroud the majestic and steep peaks, and the peaks that are about to rise into the sky are right in front of you. A palace stands tall. The top of the blue clouds. Juxiao Pavilion. It seems that the ancient palace that has been passed down for thousands of years has lost its former luxury and brilliance in the years of refinement, leaving only the strong and domineering aura that has settled down after thousands of years of wind and rain. The three black gilded characters are vigorous and vigorous, as if to show the world its noble and lofty status. The low-key and mysterious reveal an unparalleled sharpness. I am the only one who looks down on the world. The loneliness is engraved in his bones. The dark sandalwood palace gate opened wide, and countless masters quietly and silently lurked inside and outside the palace gate, like an invisible protective net, guarding in a posture, covering from all directions. 8 white-clothed waiters walked out of the palace one after another, 4 boys and 4 girls, all of whom were handsome and outstanding, with slender and elegant figures. At a glance, the visual sense was greatly satisfied. Nan 11 raised an eyebrow, this doesn't seem to be your style. Before the voice fell, 2 more people walked out of the hall, tall and imposing, one black and one white, like the black and white impermanence. One was dressed in black, cold and stern, calm and fierce, like a sharp blade that had not been unsheathed. One was dressed in white, handsome and graceful, a gentle nobleman. Nan 11 was slightly stunned. The 2 men seemed to be stunned when they saw Nan 11, then they frowned, lifted their robes and knelt down, meet the master. Nan 11 looked at the 2 men quietly, thinking that Rong Yu was really surrounded by crouching tigers and hidden dragons. She had never seen these 2 people before, but just looking at them now, she could not ignore the transcendent demeanor they exuded. 2 people with such outstanding appearance and demeanor were actually Rong Yu's subordinates. The imperial capital has Qilin and Lingfan, and there are these 2 people on Kangyun Mountain? If Rong Yu did not have some real skills, he probably would not be able to make these people willingly submit to his orders. Rong Yu did not speak, holding Nan 11's hand, and walked into the hall. The two men in black and white robes behind him stood up and followed. The other boys and girls entered the hall to serve, and calmly spread the latest snow-white fur cushions on the brocade couch in front of the carved window. The fragrance of tea was everywhere. Rong Yu sat on a low couch, with only a small sandalwood table between him and Nan 11. A maid in white came over with a jade tray, served tea to Rong Yu and Nan 11, and then bowed and left. Nan 11 quietly held the teacup. Yun Ting, Qin Shu. Rong Yu's voice was always noble and indifferent, calm but revealing a natural pressure. This is my queen, the future mistress of Juxiao Pavilion, Nan 11. Nan 11 was slightly surprised and couldn't help turning her head to look at him. Rong Yu sat upright on the couch, his demeanor was full of natural noble domineering, and the emperor's pressure was shrouded in threads, making people hold their breath and submit involuntarily. After the words fell, the two men in black and white robes in front of them once again lifted their robes and knelt down. Their movements were like flowing clouds and water, but they were willing and respectful. Subordinates Qin Shu, Yun Ting, greet the madam. As soon as the two of them knelt, the other white-clothed boys and girls in the hall all knelt down in an instant. Nan 11 had never received such a great gift before, especially since the two young men in front of her were obviously extraordinary. I'm afraid that except Rong Yu, there is no one else in the world who can make them kneel down to pay respect. She felt unworthy of it, especially when she remembered that her stupid behavior in her previous life directly killed Rong Yu. She felt that she was too stupid to be worthy of Rong Yu. What did Rong Yu like about her? What else was there to recommend her except this face? Nan 11 felt a complex taste in her heart, and she felt mixed emotions for a while. The hall was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Nan 11 didn't say anything, and Yun Ting and Qin Shu knelt quietly, with no anger on their faces and no presumptuous movements. Rong Yu looked at Nan 11 silently. Seeing that she seemed to be absent-minded, he didn't urge her, and just waited quietly, but couldn't help wondering in his heart, why was she absent-minded? Fortunately, Nan 11 quickly pulled herself out of her thoughts, raised her eyes and looked at the two people in front of her, and said in a gentle and calm voice, "Please stand up, gentlemen." The two stood up and said respectfully, "Thank you, madam. The wedding will be on April 18th, and 11 will leave Canyon Mountain." Rong Yu ordered indifferently, "Yun Ting, you are fully responsible for the preparation of this matter, and it must be grand." Must be grand? Nan 11 didn't care much about the rest, just hearing the two sentences "leaving in Canyon Mountain" and "must be grand" was enough to make her speechless. But she couldn't help but say it. Rong Yu. Nan 11 turned her head to look at him, her voice soft, "Don't be too grand. The regent of the Great Zhou is getting married, and Canyon Mountain Juxiao Pavilion is marrying a daughter. How can it not be grand?" The man in white smiled gently, "Madam, don't worry, just leave everything to me." Juxiao Pavilion marries a daughter? Nan 11 couldn't help but be silent, and then she understood. So Rong Yu had this idea. "Prepare for bathing," Rong Yu ordered calmly, "prepare the meal in half an hour, light, and go down." "Yes." Yun Ting and Qin Shu bowed and left, taking away the four young men in white in the hall. The four girls began to prepare bathing supplies and clothes for Nan 11 to wear after bathing, and then stood by respectfully holding a jade tray. "Go take a hot bath first, then have dinner." Rong Yu looked down at Nan 11, "Have a good sleep after dinner, and we'll discuss business when you wake up." Nan 11 originally wanted to say that she was not very sleepy, but when she saw the four girls waiting by the side with trays, she nodded, "Yes." Rong Yu took Nan 11's hand and led her to the bathing hall. The huge bath was filled with mist, and fresh petals of various colors floated on the clear water, and the air was filled with refreshing fragrance. "This is hot spring water brought from the mountains. Bubbles can help relieve fatigue," Rong Yu said gently, but don't soak for too long. Although she slept soundly in the carriage, traveling was generally hard, especially for a delicate woman like Nan 11 who had no martial arts skills. Nan 11 nodded. Let them serve you, I'll wait outside. Nan 11 held his hand. Stay, I have something to tell you. Rongyu was slightly shocked, turned his head to look at her stunning eyes, and gently rubbed her head. Be good, you can talk after you take a bath, I'll go out first. Stay, Nan 11 insisted, looking at him innocently with a pair of clear eyes. I'm not afraid of you seeing it, what are you worried about? Rongyu pursed his thin lips, and emotion surged in his dark eyes. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 135. Rongyu couldn't resist Nan 11's insistence and stayed, so the 4 girls who were supposed to stay here to serve were naturally dismissed. Nan 11 undressed in front of Rongyu, ignoring the emotions in her eyes that were always cold and indifferent. The water temperature in the bathtub was just right. Rongyu lay on the edge of the bathtub, closed his eyes, and massaged her neck and shoulders with his slender fingers. The right strength and moderate water temperature made her feel drowsy, so that her voice was a bit lazy like a cat. Rongyu. Rongyu's eyes were soft to the bone, but his voice always retained a bit of calmness. Want to sleep? Nan 11 hummed, and said casually, actually, it's okay. Do you want to come down and take a bath? Rongyu was silent, and then laughed softly. You wash first. Nan 11 opened her eyes and said, you want to sleep? Opening her eyes, she turned her head to look at him. Is the prince afraid that he can't be Luziawai? No. Rongyu shook his head with a smile in his eyes. I have things to deal with later with Qin Shu and Yun Ting, so there is no rush to take a bath. There should be nothing wrong with taking a bath and changing clothes before dealing with the business. In fact, you are just worried that you will not be able to control yourself if you come down to take a bath with me, Nan 11 asked. Her eyebrows seemed to be provocative. Will the prince suddenly turn into a beast? Rongyu was silent for a while after hearing this, and looked at her without saying a word, his eyes heavy. You are actually more tired than me in the past 2 days of traveling. Nan 11 straightened up and looked at him with some heartache. Come down and take a bath together, I don't mind. What are you afraid of? Anyway, we will get married in a few days, isn't it just a wedding ceremony? Rongyu didn't say anything, and her invitation was hard to resist. Nan 11's slender body sank into the water, revealing only her white jade neck and beautiful face, but this scene is obviously a great test for any normal man. Your subordinates have already called me madam, Nan 11 said, frowning slightly, but why not call me princess? Because the power of the imperial capital Regent Palace and Juxiao Pavilion is separate. Rongyu hummed. Why do you want me to marry as the daughter of Juxiao Pavilion? Nan 11 looked at him, and actually had the answer in her heart. Do you want me to become a woman envied by the whole world? Rongyu took her hand and kissed her palm. It should be said that you want me to become a man envied by the whole world. Nan 11 was stunned for a moment, and then couldn't help laughing. You, the real master of Juxiao Pavilion, are you going to become a live-in son-in-law just because you want to marry a wife? I will become a live-in son-in-law of Dongling in the future, Rongyu said in a gentle voice, his eyes burning. When that day comes, I will have to rely on madam's protection. Nan 11's heart felt like it was scratched by a cat's claw, numb, and a warm throbbing surged up. How could she not understand Rongyu's intentions? In recent years, the royal family of the Great Zhou dynasty only knew that her mother came from a merchant family, but they did not know how big her mother's merchant family was. Even in front of her father, her mother never revealed her true identity. Of course, her mother's situation was special, and the 16-year agreement was always full of variables. Even from the perspective of caring about her husband, concealing it was the best decision. So everyone thought that her mother had no other relatives except her husband and daughter. This time, her mother directly divorced her father and left with all her dowry. With the protection of the regent, her father, and the emperor could not easily check her mother's background, but Nan 11's identity as a merchant girl was well known. The dignitaries in the imperial capital always liked to judge people by appearance and family background as the standard for judging a person, so there were always people who made a fuss about the origin of a merchant girl and criticized her wantonly, saying that Nan 11 was not worthy of the regent. What's more, after marrying the regent, Nan 11 really joined the royal family and became a royal woman. As a prince of the royal bloodline, Rongyu will have more banquets and activities for the royal family in the future, either a banquet at this place or a flower viewing at that place, either the Queen Mother's birthday or the Emperor's birthday, and some festivals that require the royal family to reunite in the palace. In short, there will be more activities and banquets, and Nan 11 will have more opportunities to deal with those people. If she is always ridiculed and mocked by others for being a merchant's daughter, it would not be a pleasant thing. Of course, after becoming the regent princess, there must be few people who dare to embarrass her openly, but sometimes she will inevitably encounter some stupid and ignorant people. If Nan 11 marries from Juxiao Pavilion this time, the wedding will definitely be a sensation in the world. Not to mention the powerful people in the Great Zhou, even people from other countries will not dare to look down on her in the future. After understanding Rongyu's thoughts, Nan 11 didn't know what to say. In fact, she never cared about how others evaluated her identity. Even when she liked Gu Qingshu in her previous life, she never thought that merchant girls should be inferior to others. Her mother also made a living by her own ability. Why should she be looked down upon? Which of those nobles who seemed dignified and elegant and bright and clear, did not need to eat, drink, defecate and urinate? Which of eating, drinking, defecation, and urination did not require silver? Are they immortals who are not stained by the fireworks of the world? However, no matter how she thought, she could not change the vulgar ideas of the world. Just like now, whether she needed it or not, she was still moved by the thoughts that Rongyu poured into her. Rongyu Nan 11's cheek was against Rongyu's palm, and her voice was soft. Did I do too many good things in my previous life, saved the people of the world, and accumulated too many blessings by doing good deeds, so I was lucky to meet you in this life? Rongyu didn't say anything, but after hearing this, his eyes were somewhat deep and unfathomable. Rongyu. Not you. Rongyu looked down at her. Nan 11 looked up. What did you say? I'm the lucky one. His voice was full of suppressed emotions. I'm lucky to have met you. Nan 11 felt that his words were a bit strange, as if she was some peerless fairy. He was obviously the one with a noble status, the one with strong ability, and the one who could easily get 3,000 beauties. In this world, as long as he wanted, what kind of stunning beauty could he not get? However, from his words, it sounded as if she was some peerless treasure. Nan 11 didn't dislike this feeling. On the contrary, she felt that no woman in the world could resist the feeling of being held in the palm of someone's hand and pampered, but she still felt strange. Rongyu. She held her cheek, raised the corner of her mouth slightly, and began to use her wild imagination. Do you think we loved each other in the last life, and then for some reason it didn't end well, so you are so good to me in this life? Author's words. Good night, babies. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 136. Rongyu said nothing. His lowered eyes fell on her white and tender neck, and he didn't know what he was thinking. Nan 11 just said it casually. She knew how unrealistic this idea was, So Wrong Yu didn't say anything, so she didn't ask again. In the end, Wrong Yu adhered to the principle of not offending her before getting married, and only waited for her to bathe, and used qi to clear all the veins in her body, which not only relieved her fatigue, but also let sleepiness hit her hard. She even got out of the bath to wipe herself and get dressed. Wrong Yu takes full responsibility for everything. Nan 11 was so sleepy that she even forgot the shame of having her body exposed. After taking care of her, Wrong Yu put her in loose and comfortable pajamas and carried her directly to the bedroom. Wrong Yu, the girl who was placed on the bed, murmured in confusion. Her eyes seemed to be open, and she looked a little more confused and cute than usual. Wrong Yu. Wrong Yu lowered his head and kissed her, with a low and sweet voice. Yes, I'm here. Wrong Yu, why are you so nice? Nan 11 half opened her eyes, her voice became softer due to confusion, like catkins brushing against her heart. You are a good person, and you are good looking. No matter how you look at it, you will like it more and more. Wrong Yu's heart was throbbing, and the emotions in his chest were overwhelming. For a moment, he couldn't help but put his lips on hers again. A kiss as thin as cicada wings, without any lust, but extremely gentle. After all, Nan 11 couldn't resist the invasion of sleepiness. She stopped mumbling and her breathing quickly calmed down. Fell asleep. Wrong Yu stood by the bed, maintaining the posture of bending down to kiss her, just so quietly, his eyes quietly and persistently watching the girl's face. His slender fingers traced the delicate outline of the girl's eyebrows, with indescribable nostalgia and value. Zixi, Zixi, Zixi. Nan 11 felt as if she had had another dream. In the dream, there was someone who kept calling her Zixi and Zixi. His voice was gentle and affectionate, as if he had devoted a lifetime of tenderness. But when she woke up, she couldn't remember the scene in her dream at all. Only the voice echoed in her ears, calling her tenderly, 1111. Over and over again, piously and obsessively. Nan 11 sat on the bed and tried her best to frown, but she still couldn't remember anything. Is the girl awake? Yunyu walked in with a basin of water, put it on the shelf beside the basin, turned around and walked to the bed. Are you hungry, the girl? You can have a meal after washing up. The prince ordered someone to prepare a table. Meal is just waiting for the girl to wake up. Nan 11 came back to her senses and turned to look out the window. How long have I been sleeping? The girl slept in the morning, and it is already evening now, Yin Yu said with a smile, holding a cup for Nan 11 to rinse her mouth. The girl is tired from the journey, so the prince ordered us not to disturb the girl and let her have a good sleep. Get your energy back. Nan 11 sighed. You guys worked harder than me. I just sat in the carriage and slept the whole way and did nothing. Wrong Yu also took care of her personally all the way, and he was always by his side when she slept. For my subordinates who practice martial arts, what's the point of traveling so far? Nan 11 said sincerely, it's great to know martial arts. Yunyu smiled and said, if the girl wants to learn, you can ask the prince to teach you 2 moves to strengthen your body. It can also cultivate the relationship between husband and wife. Where's Wrong Yu? The prince is in the study. Yunyu wetted the handkerchief, wrung it out, and handed it to Nan 11 to wipe her face. Shall the girl eat first, or should I go down and invite the prince to accompany the girl? Nan 11 raised her eyes and caught a glimpse of the person walking in from the door. She smiled lightly and said, you don't need to invite me. Silver Moon turned around and looked. Wrong Yu, dressed in a snow-white clean light robe, walked in from outside the palace. He had a dignified face, cold eyebrows, and an immortal aura that was untainted by dust. He was so handsome and noble that people couldn't take their eyes away. Silver Moon was blessed and quickly left with all the maids in the palace. Her prince is truly a peerless figure in the sky and unparalleled in the earth. He looks like a fairy who stepped out of a painting. Your Majesty, you look really good today. Nan 11 looked at him with a smile. Are you trying to make me unable to take my eyes away? Wrong Yu raised her lips, is it just that you look good today? No, the prince's face is so beautiful every day that people can't help but want to look at it more. Nan 11 smiled slightly, and there seemed to be tiny lights embedded in her eyes. It's just that it looks particularly beautiful today. Rong Yu lowered his head and kissed her, with a soft voice, as long as you like it, go out to eat. Nan 11 hummed, and watched Rong Yu squat down to put on her shoes. Her heart was filled with a sense of fulfillment, but at the same time she was moved. She suddenly felt uneasy. Rong Yu. Huh? Rong Yu raised his eyes. Can we really grow old together like this? Nan 11 frowned slightly, and her fingers unconsciously hooked his hair. You are so good to me. In the future, when my youth is gone, my appearance will no longer be as good as it is now. Beautiful, will you fall in love with other women? Rong Yu is now so kind to her that it feels unreal to her. Now she is in her 28th year, which is when a woman's appearance is most attractive. But time is ruthless, and no one can guarantee that he will always be young and beautiful. What if he gets tired of seeing this face after they have been together for a long time? What if he sees a more beautiful woman with a younger face in the future? Will he change his mind? Nan 11 couldn't imagine whether she would be able to withstand the shock of falling from heaven to hell if faced with such a situation. Rong Yu pursed her lips and remained silent for a moment. No. Nan 11 looked at him. There is only you, irreplaceable. Rong Yu held her in his arms, lowered his head and kissed her forehead. No matter what you become, even if you are gray-haired and wrinkled, I will not like other women. Really? Really? Rong Yu's hand around her waist tightened unconsciously. I am the one who should worry about this problem. Nan 11 was stunned when she heard this, and then raised her eyebrows. Are you afraid that I will abandon you? Rong Yu hummed. I won't. Nan 11 pouted. I am not a person who loves new things and dislikes old things, and a man like you is hard to find in the world. There is no second one in the world, and I am not stupid. Besides, he is the noble regent, and the master of Juxiao Pavilion. With such a powerful identity and powerful skills, even a stunning beauty who can overwhelm the country will surrender and fall when she sees him. How can he have such worries? However, thinking of his persistence in her in the previous life, Nan 11 also knew that she was actually hypocritical. Although she didn't know what attracted Rong Yu to her, his deep affection and persistence were indeed rare in the world. Let's go to dinner. Rong Yu let her go and took her hand instead. It's getting dark. I'll take you to the top of the mountain after dinner. Nan 11 joked, can you touch the stars from the top of the mountain? Rong Yu shook his head, the view will be better. Nan 11 didn't say anything else. Her eyes fell slightly on the hands they held together. She felt the warmth in her palms, surrounded by dense tenderness, and her heart softened. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 137. The dinner was sumptuous. The table is filled with a dazzling array of freshly cooked delicacies, which are all delicious and delicious. Just looking at them will make you want to eat. Rong Yu sat next to her and served her a bowl of rich abalone soup. Nan 11 is only responsible for eating calmly and elegantly. Don't patronize me, you should eat more. Nan 11 picked up some dishes for Rong Yu. I think it's better to make your own meals. It tastes like home. There are so many people around, so I can't even eat. Comfortable. He looked at Rong Yu and said, after we get married, can we just have dinner, just the two of us? Rong Yu's eyebrows softened. Okay. Nan 11 smiled slightly, enjoying the dinner quietly and harmoniously. After the meal, the two of them walked hand in hand through the mountains, slowly heading towards the top of the mountain. Qingyang and Yunyu followed from a distance, looking at the tenderness of their prince, and sighed faintly. The prince who is immersed in the gentle land, will he? Could it be something? Yunyu frowned. Are you itchy again? Do you really want to be thrown off the cliff? Qingyang was speechless for a while. I just said casually, why are you anxious? It's not okay to say it casually, Yunyu snorted coldly. I just like to see the prince doting on the girl. Qingyang had a strange expression. I'm not doting on you, what do you like? Yunyu sneered, you know nothing. How rude. Yunyu ignored him and turned to look at Yin Shuang, who still had no sense of presence. Shuang have you ever imagined that you can meet a good husband in the future? Hearing this, Yin Huang looked at her expressionlessly, with a luster in her eyes that looked like she was looking at an idiot. This is such a stupid question, Qingyang complained mercilessly. Yin Shuang doesn't even bother to talk to you. Yunyu clenched her fists. If the prince and the girl hadn't been there, she would have given this bastard a lesson. She was just saying it casually. Who in their status would fantasize unrealistically about a wishful husband? Do you understand small talk? Forget it, talking to this bastard Qingyang will make him angry to death sooner or later. The moonlight is bright in the mountains, and mist covers the majestic and steep valleys. Rongyu and Nan 11 arrived at the highest mountain on the top of Juxiao Pavilion. The mountain breeze was slightly cool at night. Rongyu, dressed in snow white, stood in the wind, with fluttering clothes, looking more and more like a banished immortal who had descended from the mortal world. Nan 11 took a step back and looked at him with full eyes. Your Majesty really looks like. Before he finished speaking, he saw the banished immortal master calmly lifting his clothes and sitting on the ground. His snow-white clothes were completely unworried about being stained by dust. Nan 11's voice paused, and the unfinished words were stuck in her throat. What does it look like? Rongyu patted the flat boulder beside him and asked softly. Nan 11 shook her head and sat down next to him. It's nothing. Gazing at the mountains in the distance, Nan 11 slowly lay down on Rongyu's lap, looking up at the starry sky. The night is so beautiful tonight. The moonlight was bright and the mountain breeze was blowing on my face. The couple of gods and gods are far away from the mortal world and immersed in the fairy land shrouded in clouds and mist. It is so beautiful that it makes people feel like they are in a fantasy land. Rongyu hummed and agreed with her words. Wherever she is, the night becomes beautiful. Nan 11 sighed softly, I wonder where my mother is. We have left the Dazu border. Rongyu gently brushed her hair. Someone will come to pick her up in Dongling, you don't have to worry. General Ling will send my mother to Dongling. Rongyu nodded. I also arranged some secret guards on the way, and there are also many experts around your mother who can deal with those who are following you. Nan 11 felt relieved because her mother had left Dazu in a big battle and the team was too conspicuous. The people sent by the emperor or the prime minister could easily be tracked and could not be easily shaken off. Unless all the people who are following you secretly are silenced. But she really doesn't need to worry about this. How can she, a weak woman with no strength, compare to Rongyu and her mother's thoughtfulness? Rongyu should have made arrangements for these concerns long before she raised them. How come I am so lucky to have a strong husband and a powerful mother? Nan 11 looked at Rongyu's noble face and couldn't help but sigh. I don't have to do anything in this life, as long as I am loved by you, just pamper her. Rongyu looked down at her. Nan 11 was wearing a long red gauze dress tonight, which was already stunning. Now under the cover of night, the girl smiled at him with crooked eyebrows. Her stunning beauty was so captivating that it was as if the golden beauties of the golden age were before her eyes. Blooming, Rongyu was almost stunned when she saw it. Be pampered by them. Rongyu thought to himself that being able to pamper her in this life was the greatest happiness for him. I heard that some experts who are proficient in astrology and divination can predict the fate of the imperial star and the country through the changes in the stars in the sky. Nan 11 said in a soft voice. Rongyu, do you believe this? Rongyu is a powerful general, a strategizing regent, a powerful official with a heart as deep as the sea, and an arrogant and noble strong man. He should not believe in such things as fate. However, Rongyu whispered one word, trust. Letter. Nan 11 was slightly surprised. Do you also believe in fate? Is it weird, Rong Yu could not help but caress her delicate cheek with his fingers, and the corners of his lips were slightly raised. I am also a human being, don't treat me like a myth. Nan 11 blinked, does the prince believe there are gods in the sky? Rong Yu said, I've never seen it before. Nan 11 was silent for a moment, then laughed out loud. The prince said this in a serious manner at this time. He is completely different from his usual indifferent and taciturn appearance. Belief is belief, disbelief is disbelief. Never seen it? What is this statement? Who in this world has truly seen an immortal? Nan 11 closed her eyes slightly. Am I going to stay here for the time being? Yes, Rong Yu nodded with a gentle tone. Yunyu and Yin's Huang will also stay behind. If you have any questions, you can ask Yunting. Nan 11 asked, is the man in white clothes in the morning Yunting? He seems to be easier to get along with, Nan 11 said, a gentle and handsome young man. Rong Yu was silent, his eyes dim. But I'm still not as good looking as you. Nan 11 opened her eyes and looked at Rong Yu with a smile. My prince is the prettiest. My prince. Rong Yu lowered his head and looked at the girl lying on his lap. Her eyebrows were bright and moving, her pupils were shining, and her whole body exuded a vitality like bright sunshine. Cangyun Mountain is far away from the capital of the Great Zhou dynasty, so the ceremonial guard leaving the pavilion needs to leave 2 days in advance. Rong Yu said, Yunyu and Yin's Huang will take care of you on the way, and Yunting will also arrange your daily life, so you can get married with peace of mind. That's it? After speaking, he lowered his head and his voice became softer. The wedding team from the Prince Regent's palace will also leave earlier and meet halfway to welcome my bride. The last few words swirled on the tip of the tongue, with a hint of sweetness that penetrated into the bones. The author has something to say. I read the comments of the babies today and it's a bit of a spoiler. This article is an ancient proverb about rebirth and will not be written as a myth. I think rebirth should not be considered fantasy. As for past and present lives, I don't think it is fantasy either. I always thought that fantasy was the kind of cultivation and upgrading. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 138. The regent's wedding date was set for April 18, and the news quickly spread throughout the streets and alleys of the imperial capital. The emperor and the empress dowager in the palace were always paying attention to the movements of the regent's mansion, and naturally received the news as quickly as possible. April 18th. Yes. The emperor frowned and ordered to go to Xi'an Palace. The date is set for April 18th. The empress dowager twisted her Buddhist beads with a cold face. As expected, the regent is a powerful person. He can make his own decision on such an important matter as marriage, and there is no need to ask my opinion. The emperor is right, he has no idea of being loyal to the emperor at all. Nan 11 is the daughter of Yuan. Although Yuan and the prime minister have divorced, it seems that Yuan left a large amount of property to this legitimate daughter of the Nan family before leaving the imperial city. His Majesty the Emperor's eyebrows were heavy, and his pupils were a little dark. The regent has military power and the legitimate daughter of the Nan family has money. How can I feel at ease when these two get married? The Empress Dowager was silent. His Majesty the Emperor said indifferently, does the Queen Mother have any countermeasures? Countermeasures, the Queen Mother said coldly, the Regent Prince has never been close to women, and he is probably still a little unfamiliar with bed matters. Just send 2 palace maids to teach him. Teaching palace maids? His Majesty pursed his lips and said nothing. He did not think that this method would have any substantial effect. Doesn't the Wen family girl like the Regent Prince? The Queen Mother frowned, seemingly kind-hearted, but the color in her eyes was full of calculations. It's better to have double happiness on the day of the big wedding, and give the Wen family girl to him in marriage. Marriage. His Majesty the Emperor frowned. Miss Wen is of noble birth, it is impossible for her to be willing to be someone's concubine. If I grant her marriage, wouldn't it be unfair to her? Besides, will Master Wen agree? Who said to make Miss Wen a concubine? The Queen Mother said coldly, the Emperor only needs to issue an imperial decree to make Miss Wen the principal consort. When the regent gets married, all the civil and military officials in the court will go to congratulate him. I don't believe that the regent dares to openly disobey the order in front of the civil and military officials. Rong Chuyun did not speak. As for Miss Nan, the Queen Mother sneered, hasn't the Prime Minister's mansion just set a precedent? If the regent really doesn't want to wrong her, let her be a co-wife, which is the best of both worlds. Rong Chuyun lowered his eyes and said nothing. The Queen Mother thought things too simply. Although she was the final winner among all the women in the harem of the previous emperor, her mind was deeper than that of ordinary people, and she had more means. She was a woman after all, and her thinking could not escape the calculations of the harem's intrigues. Did she really think that her son became the emperor and she became the high and mighty Empress Dowager, so she could rest easy and let everyone obey her orders in fear? The emperor knew the temper of the regent king very well, and he even disdained to pretend. How could he willingly accept the emperor's order against his will? However, the emperor knew that he would not agree to let the daughter of the Nan family marry the regent king. Has there been any other unusual movements in the regent king's mansion these 2 days? Rong Chuyun leaned on the couch, lowered his eyes and sipped a sip of tea, and shook his head slowly. There has been no news in the past 2 days. How can there be no news in the regent king's mansion? The Queen Mother frowned, turned her head and ordered, Pan Hai. Empress Dowager Pan Zhongguan bowed forward. You personally take people, select 2 palace maids to teach and send them to the regent king's mansion, and say that it is my intention. The Queen Mother said coldly, you must see the regent king and come back. Pan Hai accepted the order. The servant obeys the order. He bowed and retreated. Rong Chuyun didn't stop him. At this time, he also thought of something wrong. Normally, even if the regent didn't go out, he shouldn't be silent for several days in a row. To protect Nan 11? Rong Chuyun's eyebrows deepened, and he stood up and said, Mother, take a rest. I will go to the imperial study to deal with some things. The Queen Mother didn't keep him, but said, I will send someone to inform the emperor in time if there is any news here. If the emperor has a plan in mind, he might as well summon Gu Qingshu to the palace. He should be useful. Rong Chuyun said, I know what to do, Mother, don't worry. After leaving Xi'an Palace, Rong Chuyun summoned the most reliable confidant and secret guard around him. Has the regent left the palace these 2 days? The man in black lowered his head. According to the report of the spies in the regent's palace, the regent has not appeared for several days in a row. Not shown for several days? Rong Chuyun's expression was slightly gloomy, and a dark light flashed in his eyes. Find a way to find out the whereabouts of the regent. Yes. Pan Hai led his men out of the palace to the regent's mansion, and happened to meet Su Muchen, who had returned from looking for medicine. General Manager Pan, Su Muchen knew the eunuch beside the Queen Mother, and stopped to look at him curiously. What's the matter, General Manager? Pan Hai was an old man beside the Queen Mother, and had served her since she was still the queen. His seniority and majesty in the palace were extraordinary, so of course he had to put on airs in front of Su Muchen, a small palace doctor. Is the regent in the palace sent by the Queen Mother? He said. Is the regent in the mansion? Maidens. Su Muchen was stunned for a moment, and slowly turned his head to look behind Pan Hai, only to notice that 2 beautiful and dignified maids were standing there with their eyebrows lowered. He was silent, and his expression gradually became strange. Maidens. Does his prince need maids? Move aside. Pan Hai stood outside and waited impatiently. I want to go in and see the prince. Manager Pan, wait a moment. Su Muchen came back to his senses and quickly reached out to stop him. The prince won't see guests. Not seeing guests? Pan Hai frowned, his expression clearly unhappy. Mr. Su, are you trying to please us? Su Muchen sneered. A eunuch actually dared to show off in front of him. To be honest, the prince is not in the palace right now, he said in a light tone. You can't see the prince even if you go in. Panhai didn't believe it. Besides, my prince shouldn't need any palace maids to teach him. Sumuchen smiled lightly. The queen mother is thoughtful. After speaking, he glanced at the two palace maids, turned around and went into the palace. Panhai looked unprepared, and was about to ask the guards to go in and report, but he saw Sumuchen raised his hand, and the guards at the gate of the palace said nothing more, and just closed the gate of the regent palace in front of Panhai. Panhai's face suddenly darkened, and he stared at the slowly closing door without blinking. His face was ashen, and he turned around and shook his Buddhist dust, returned to the palace. The people in the regent's palace are really arrogant. Even a small palace doctor dared not give him face. No wonder the emperor said that the regent had the intention of rebellion, and it seemed to be true. Back in Xi'an Palace, Panhai reported everything to the Queen Mother, with a tone of obvious dissatisfaction. The regent is not in the palace. The Queen Mother paused with her hand twisting the Buddhist beads, frowned and looked at the steward in front of her. Are you sure? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 139. That's what Dr. from the Prince Regent's palace said, Panhai said, but I don't know if what he said is true. The Queen Mother's eyebrows showed a dark color, and her tone was cold and stern. Since the doctor of the Prince Regent's palace said that the Prince Regent is not here, then call the doctor here to ask. Panhai was silent after hearing the words, and then the corners of his lips slightly raised, and a cold smile flashed from his eyes. I'll do it now, my slave. Thinking of Sumuchen's indifferent attitude towards him just now, Panhai smiled coldly in his heart. Just a little doctor, how dare you put on airs in front of him? I really don't know how to write the word death. So Panhai once again took people out of the palace in a hurry and went to the regent's palace. Unfortunately, as soon as I arrived outside the gate of the Prince Regent's palace, I saw all the guards, maids, and servants in the palace standing in 2 rows. The steward led the people to wait respectfully in the front yard of the palace. The atmosphere is solemn and the rules are strict. Even if they saw Panhai getting off the carriage, no one came forward to pay attention to him. Panhai's Hung was angry when he suddenly heard the clatter of horse hooves coming from far and near. The iron-blooded dull sound seemed to hit his heart all at once, and he subconsciously turned his head to look. The man sitting on the horse is wearing a black gold-woven robe, which makes him tall and tall, with a fierce momentum. He has a noble and handsome face, like a god descending from the sky. His dignity is unattainable. Behind him, dozens of Soigné soldiers were in uniform, riding their horses to follow him in a guard manner. Panhai suddenly thought of those rumors in the past. The Suanjia army under the regent was the elite among the elite. The Suanjia army was invincible wherever it went. On the battlefield, it was like a magic weapon falling from the sky, making the enemy terrified. Panhai did not expect to see such a scene with his own eyes today. His expression changed slightly, and he was so shocked that he could not react for a while. Until the regent's horse came closer and closer, 2 thoughts flashed through his mind involuntarily during his silence. It turned out that the regent the king was really not in the house, and Sumuchen didn't lie. The second thought is, where did the regent go during the 2 days he was away from the palace? He looked dusty as if he had been on the road for a long time. Where did he come back from? According to imperial decrees, princes with military power are not allowed to leave the capital without permission, let alone deploy troops at will, otherwise it will be regarded as treason. Without the emperor's decree or the regent's order, who would dare to lead troops out of the city without permission? However, the regent himself held great power. He not only held the military power, but also the power of the government. Before handing over the power of the regent, his words were equivalent to the emperor's imperial edict. So who dares to punish him? Pan Hai's face was gloomy and he saw the regent dismounting his horse outside the gate of the palace. The servant took the reins and led the horse off. The servants of the palace knelt down and saluted. Rong Yu didn't stop for a moment and was about to walk to the mansion. Pan Hai quickly waited for the carriage and trotted forward. "Old slave, see the regent." Rong Yu paused slightly, turned to look at him, and said in an indifferent tone, "Is something wrong?" To the Prince Regent, Pan Hai had a respectful and flattering smile on his face to cover up his fear of facing the Prince Regent. "I am under the order of the Queen Mother, please ask so from the royal palace." No, I would like to invite the Prince Regent to come to the palace. The Queen Mother has something important to discuss with you." Rong Yu said in an indifferent tone, "In a hurry?" "No, it's not urgent." Pan Hai shook his head quickly, and then added, "But it's very important." Rong Yu said calmly, "I will go back to the palace to bathe and change clothes, and then enter the palace in the evening." "Yes," Pan Hai responded, and he finally breathed a sigh of relief, "I'm retiring." Rong Yu ignored him and walked into the palace expressionlessly. "Has anyone come over these 2 days?" The steward followed behind Rong Yu and said, "General Manager Pan came here once at noon and sent 2 maids to guide him. He happened to meet Mr. Su when he came back, so he sent them away directly." "Teach the palace maid?" Qing Yang was stunned for a moment, and then his face turned strange. Pan Hai came to the regent's palace because the Queen Mother wanted to give it to his prince to teach the maids. He couldn't help but wonder what was in the Queen Mother's mind. When did his prince need to teach his maids? The Queen Mother simply had bad intentions and wanted to ruin her master's marriage, right? Humph, that's a nice thought. I'm afraid that the grand wedding that will cause a stir in Zhou dynasty in a few days will shock the Queen Mother speechless." Rong Yu didn't say anything and went back to the palace to bathe and change clothes. Qing Yang ordered the maid to go to the kitchen to get some food. The master was reluctant to leave with Miss Nan in Kangyun Mountain. When he came back, he had to prepare for the wedding ceremony. He was in such a hurry that there was no one on the way. How to eat well? But it's worth the hard work. Qing Yang couldn't help but feel excited when he thought that the regent's palace would soon welcome a mistress, and she would be a mistress who could make the prince gentle and humane. Rong Yu came out of the bathing hall, put on the regent's gold-woven python suit, had a simple bowl of porridge, and then took Qing Yang into the palace. While he was bathing and changing clothes in the palace, Pan Hai had already reported the news to the Queen Mother that the regent had returned to the palace and would soon enter the palace. The Queen Mother sent someone to inform the emperor. The emperor, who was handling the memorial in the royal study, heard that the matter was serious. He wanted to get up and rush to Xi'an Palace, but he felt that he was too eager, so he suppressed the impulse and slowly sat back on the dragon throne. "Your Majesty," the personal chamberlain asked in a low voice. "Wait a moment," Rong Chuiyun said in a cold tone, with a deep color in his eyes, "don't be too hasty." "Yes." Although he didn't want to show too eagerly, Rong Chuiyun's mind was already confused. He didn't want to show that he was afraid of the regent, but the fact was that he was indeed afraid of the regent, and he was afraid of this powerful and flawless man. "Little Emperor Uncle. Come here," he said solemnly, "go and keep an eye on Xi'an Palace. After the regent enters Xi'an Palace, come and report to me." As ordered. The atmosphere in the palace tonight is a little different from usual. However, what is different from before is the expression of his prince. Qing Yang found that since leaving Kangyun Mountain, his master has returned to his former cold and distant self, becoming the dignified and unapproachable iron-blooded regent who makes people tremble with fear. The aura exuded from his body is as cold as frost, and even his personal guard is a little scared. When they arrived at Xi'an Palace, the palace servants went to report to the Queen Mother. Of course, the Queen Mother did not dare to embarrass the regent. No matter how dissatisfied she was with her uncle in her heart, She did not dare to show any dissatisfaction on the surface. Rong Yu walked into Xi'an Palace, and the palace maids and eunuchs knelt on the ground. He ignored her and said calmly, "What does the Queen Mother want to see me about?" The Queen Mother had gotten used to his cold attitude and ordered someone to give Rong Yu a seat, but Rong Yu did not sit down. She just said, "If you have something to say, just say it." "About your marriage," the Queen Mother held the teacup and said solemnly, "Rong Yu, Nan 11 is not worthy of you." Rong Yu's face suddenly turned cold, his eyebrows and eyes were cold. "It is not the turn of others to comment on my wife. You should know the rules of marrying a wife for the royal family." The Queen Mother frowned. "If you really want to marry her, I have a condition." Author's words. Grand wedding tomorrow. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 140. Condition. Rong Yu's eyebrows were cold and he didn't speak. The Wen family girl likes you. Many people know this. For you, she even gave up the opportunity to enter the palace draft. This girl is very affectionate, and you should cherish it, the Queen Mother said lightly. Besides, Miss Wen has outstanding appearance and noble family background. She is one of the few ladies in the imperial capital who is worthy of you. She is also pleasing to the AI family. She is well informed and proficient in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Isn't she much better than Miss Nan, who was born in a merchant family? The AI family wants to marry her to you, and she will definitely become your good wife in the future. Rong Yu remained indifferent and silent, and his noble features gradually became covered with a layer of frosty mist. Wen Lan will be the main concubine, and the Nan family girl will be the side concubine. This does not mean she has been wronged. After the Queen Mother finished speaking, she thought of the two maids who were sent back at noon, and added, "You are a teenager. You have gone to the battlefield, and although you are good at leading troops in battles, you have never been close to women, and you probably still don't know much about sex, so the AI family asked Pan Hai to select two maids for you to teach you." "Are you done?" Rong Yu said, his voice as cold as iron. "If you are done, I will take my leave." The Queen Mother was stunned, and then her expression changed. "Rong Yu, the AI family is doing this for your own good. They say that a sister-in-law is like a mother. The late emperor is no longer here, so the AI family will have to worry more about your marriage. Don't worry about it. I'm sorry, as a royal family, you have to do many things yourself. When you marry a good wife, you have to be well matched. You can't just do whatever you want." After a pause, "Besides, a lowly merchant girl can't even get into the royal family's genealogy. I don't need you to worry about my marriage," Rong Yu said in a stern tone, not intending to save any face for the most noble woman in the world. If the Queen Mother is really free, there are still many people in the royal family who are not yet married. "My dear Prince, I will not interfere with whoever the Queen Mother likes to marry." The Queen Mother's face suddenly turned cold. "Rong Yu, you. If I hear dirty words from anyone again in the future, don't blame me for making her unable to speak from now on." Rong Yu looked at her coldly, his eyes full of evil. "Even if it's you, same thing." A chill ran down the Queen Mother's spine. When she looked into his evil eyes, she suddenly felt a chill running up her back from the soles of her feet. Her blood seemed to be frozen in an instant, which made her face turn pale and her mind was shaken. Rong Yu didn't care what she did. After saying this, he obviously didn't intend to stay and listen to her nonsense, so he turned around and walked out without looking back. "The Emperor has arrived." A high-pitched voice sounded, and all the palace residents in Xi'an Palace knelt down again to welcome the Holy Emperor. As soon as Rong Yu walked out of the palace gate, he met the oncoming Emperor Luan Xie. "Slave, please see the regent eunuch Yang." Several young eunuchs around him, and the accompanying guards all knelt down. "The regent is 1,000 years old, 1,000 years old, 1,000 years old." "Uncle, His Majesty the Emperor," who was dressed in a dragon robe, looked at Rong Yu in surprise, as if he was surprised that he would appear in Xi'an Palace at this time. What a coincidence. I just happened to come to see my mother, and since the emperor's uncle is here, I will go and come sit with me. I have something to discuss with your uncle. Rongyu narrowed her eyes and slowly brushed the sleeves of her robe embroidered with gold thread python patterns. I have been busy with the wedding for the past 2 days and have no time to chat with the emperor. Rong Chuiun's face stiffened, and then he smiled nonchalantly, welcoming the bride. Is the emperor really determined to marry the Nan family's legitimate daughter? Otherwise, Rongyu raised his eyes slightly, and his stern gaze fell on his face. His indifferent voice could not detect any emotional fluctuations, but it made people feel unreasonably frightened. Since we met here, I will follow you by the way. Your Majesty, please give me a few words. Rong Chuiun's heart trembled, and he felt a little displeased in vain, but he still said with a smile, what does the emperor want to say? Nan 11 is my king. Ni Lin. Rongyu's eyes were cold and his voice was cold. If anyone, even the 9-5 supreme being or the queen mother of a country, dares to have his thoughts on her, I will not be merciful. The air seemed to suddenly condense. The eunuchs and guards kneeling around them were all shocked, and they lowered their bodies unconsciously, wishing they could knock their heads to the ground. Sky? Is the regent warning the emperor? Uncle Emperor, what do you mean? Rong Chuiun is the king of a country after all, and when he was warned in front of the palace people, his face instantly darkened. Uncle Emperor, are you threatening me? You can treat it as a threat, it's not important. Rongyu said indifferently, there are many things that this king can tolerate, but only Nan 11, whoever offends will die. If the emperor still wants to sit down safely on the throne, then remember this king's words and don't do anything stupid. After saying this, he lifted his feet and left expressionlessly, not paying attention to the emperor's reaction after hearing this threatening warning. Rong Chuiun's whole body was shrouded in cold air, and he sat stiffly on the Emperor Luin's chariot. His face was livid and gloomy, the color in his eyes was strange and unpredictable, and there was a strong murderous aura surging wildly. Rongyu. Rongyu. You are really so kingless and rebellious that you don't even take me as the king of a country seriously, and you still dare to threaten me? How can I continue to tolerate you? Go and find out where the regent has been these days since he left the capital. He spoke slowly and coldly, with an unprecedented sinister look in his eyes. I want to know all his movements. According to the order. However, before he could find out anything, the wedding date had arrived as promised. In the past 2 days, the imperial city had become obviously lively due to the regent's wedding. Although this marriage could not be blessed by everyone, some people stayed at home twisting their handkerchiefs and secretly hated it, but they could not change this fact at all. It was April 14 when Rongyu returned to the imperial capital from Kangyun Mountain. All matters, big and small, were handed over to his confidants to take care of, and he was only responsible for preparing for the wedding. On the morning of April 17, the regent, dressed in a white robe and showing his nobleness, rode out of the imperial city on a vigorous horse, and behind him were hundreds of black armored soldiers guarding majestically and imposingly. Everyone was puzzled, wondering why the regent was leaving the city at this time when the wedding ceremony was about to take place. Ordinary subjects naturally did not know that the mighty wedding procession had been escorting the future princess of the regent's palace from the foot of Kangyun Mountain for a day and was heading to the imperial capital. Rongyu's departure from the city this time was naturally to welcome his bride. He led the Suanjia army out of the city on horseback, and the speed was naturally fast. The team escorting Nan 11 walked slower, and Rongyu managed the time just right. At noon on the 17th, Rongyu and his team arrived at Weikan, 200 miles away from the capital of the Great Zhou dynasty, and joined the team that escorted the bride. Rongyu abandoned his horse and got into the sedan chair. Looking at the girl who seemed to have missed him so much in a day, his eyes were full of affection. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula. Push, mode, Thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix.